Have you ever hit that part of the Bible and just hit a wall? You know what I'm talking about. The law. It can feel like such a slog. But what if it's not? Today, we're diving into Chapter 8 of Faithful Mac's book, and we're going to see how these ancient rules aren't just a chore, but something absolutely essential to the whole story.
So the author kicks things off with this memory that, so many of us can relate to, right? Remember that? Pulling every single blanket and pillow you could find, dragging chairs around, trying to build the perfect, most epic hideout. It was a ton of work, but the result, it felt like pure magic.
But you know what happens next? The blankets start to slip. The chairs get wobbly. And pretty soon, your amazing fortress is just a jumbled mess. Well, let's be honest, sometimes reading the Bible can feel exactly like that. You get the exciting stories in Genesis, the beautiful poetry of the Psalms, the New Testament. It all makes sense. But then you hit the Old Testament law, and it feels like the whole thing is about to come crashing down.
Yeah, let's just call it what it is, the sticky problem. For a lot of us, the law feels, dense, repetitive, and maybe a little disconnected from our lives today. It's that part of the Bible reading plan where you're really tempted to just skip ahead. Seriously, when you're wading through pages and pages of regulations about sacrifices or, specific skin diseases, it is so easy to start wondering, okay, what on earth does this have to do with me? It feels less like an epic story and a lot more like a really tedious legal document.
But here's the huge idea the author presents. What if the law isn't some random interruption in the story? What if it's not a roadblock at all? What if it's the one thing that connects everything, the piece that makes the whole story click?
Okay, let's go back to our fort for a second. What's the one thing you need to hold it all together? Tape. The author argues that the law is the tape of the entire biblical story. It's not just a dusty old rulebook. It's the structural element that connects the beginning of the story all the way to its climax. This slide just lays it out so perfectly. We're so used to looking at the law through that lens on the left, right? We see rules, judgment, outdated, boring. But the author wants us to shift our perspective completely, to see it through the lens on the right, as relational, as an act of love, and as absolutely foundational. And this isn't just playing with words. It completely changes how we read everything. So how can a list of rules possibly be relational? Well, the key word here is covenant. See, the law isn't just a random list of do's and don'ts. It's the terms of a sacred agreement. I love the author's comparison to adoption papers. Think about it. That big legal document isn't cold or impersonal. It's the very thing that formalizes a new, incredibly deep personal relationship. It says, you belong.
And this is the crucial point. The law lays out how a perfect, holy God can actually live among an imperfect, sinful people. It sets up the boundaries and the pathways for that relationship to even exist. So when you look at it that way, it's not about restriction. It's all about connection. Okay, so if the law is this important, how do we even begin to get our heads around it? Well, a really helpful way to break it down is a framework that scholars use today, which sorts the law into 3 basic categories. So first up, you've got the ceremonial law. This is everything to do with worship, the sacrifices, the food laws, the temple rituals. Then there's the judicial law, which was basically the civil code for running the nation of Israel. And finally, you have the moral law, think the 10 Commandments, which reveals the timeless, unchanging character of God himself. But here's a super important piece of context we have to remember. This 3-part distinction, it's a modern tool we use to help us understand the text. For the ancient Israelites who first received it, it was all just the law. One unified instruction from God for his people. So it's a helpful lens for us, but it's not one they would have used. So now that we have this framework, we can start to see how each of these categories, in its own way, points to the same ultimate destination. For Christians, understanding the law isn't just an academic exercise, it's all leading somewhere specific. And while it's interesting to ask questions about diet or tattoos, the author says those are secondary. There is a much more important question we should be asking ourselves as we read through these ancient texts. The most important question is this: where is Christ in this law? And as you can see here, the answer is everywhere. Every single one of these laws is like a giant arrow pointing to Jesus. The law shows us God's perfect standard, which shows us just how much we fall short and how desperately we need a Savior. It points to Jesus as the final, perfect sacrifice that fulfills every ritual. And ultimately, it shows us a God who is both perfectly just and perfectly loving, who provides the payment that his own law demands. All right, let's zoom out for a minute and see where this tape fits in the grand scheme of the whole Bible. How does the law connect the entire story? This simple timeline from the book really brings it all together beautifully. You've got creation, and then you have the fall, which shatters humanity's relationship with God. And then comes the law. It doesn't fix the problem, but it diagnoses it perfectly. It shows the standard of holiness required to be with God, which perfectly sets the stage for the only possible solution, redemption at the cross, where Jesus fulfills the law and restores that broken relationship.
You see, without the law, the cross loses its context. It's the law that shows us the depth of our problem. It's the tape that holds the problem, the fall, and the solution, the cross, together in one single powerful story. It makes the good news that much better.
And that leaves us with this final challenge. The next time you're in Leviticus and your eyes start to glaze over, don't just skip ahead. Just pause and ask this question. Because hidden inside all those detailed rules, you might just find the most profound revelation of God's love, His justice, and His incredible plan to make a way to be with us.